It was a quiet morning, the kind Miss Laverne Jackson enjoyed the most. Birds chirped softly outside her small house as the sun gently touched her windows. Laverne, a 72-year-old retired schoolteacher, moved slowly but steadily around her home, fixing herself a cup of tea and humming her favorite gospel tune. She had lived in that neighborhood for over 40 years. Almost everyone on the block knew her, especially the children who had once sat in her classroom and now greeted her with warm smiles whenever they passed by. She dressed neatly as always, a long blue dress, a cardigan, and her comfortable black shoes. Today was her grocery day, and she made sure her list was ready. A little bread, some milk, fresh apples if they had them. Her list was short, but she liked walking to the store. It helped her feel active and allowed her to greet people along the way. As she locked her door and stepped onto the sidewalk, she waved to her neighbor, Mr. Hawkins, who was watering his plants. He waved back with a smile. "Morning, Miss Laverne," he called out. "Morning, Harold," she replied kindly. Her pace was slow but full of grace. Every step showed her strength, even if age had slowed her down a little. The grocery store wasn't far. About 4 blocks from her home, past the library and a quiet park. Laverne enjoyed passing by both. She loved books, and sometimes she'd stop to rest on a bench under the old oak tree at the park. But today she walked straight to the store. The air was warm, and she didn't want her milk to spoil. When she entered the store, she nodded to the cashier and picked up a basket. She made her way through the aisles, taking her time. She checked the apples carefully, as she always did, looking for the ones without bruises. Then she added a loaf of wheat bread, a carton of eggs, and her favorite strawberry jam. When she reached the checkout line, 2 lanes were open. One was crowded with younger folks in a hurry, the other had just one man standing with a full cart. She chose the one with fewer people, thinking it would be quicker. What she didn't notice was a small handwritten sign at the counter. Express. Lane 10 items or less. Laverne had 12 items. She placed them on the counter gently. The young cashier glanced at her list, then at the sign and sighed loudly. "Ma'am, this is the express lane," he said sharply. Laverne looked up, surprised. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see the sign," she replied politely. "I can move to the other line." The man behind her grunted. "She's already putting stuff down. Just let her finish." But the cashier wasn't interested in being patient. He picked up the phone behind the counter and dialed something quickly. Laverne didn't think much of it at first. She thought maybe he was calling a manager. She began putting her items back into her basket to switch lines. Just a minute later, 2 local police officers walked into the store. They were young, both looking serious. The cashier pointed at Laverne. "She's not following store rules. She's causing problems." Laverne stood still, confused. "Excuse me?" she asked softly. Before she could explain, the taller officer stepped toward her. "Ma'am, we received a complaint." "Step away from the counter." His voice was stern, not loud, but firm. Laverne blinked, unsure of what was happening. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble," she said calmly. "I was just about to move to the other line." The other officer looked annoyed. "We don't have time for this. You need to come with us." People around the store had started watching. Some pulled out their phones, curious. Laverne felt her heart beating faster. She didn't understand why this was turning into such a big problem. "I haven't done anything wrong," she said quietly. She reached for her basket to show them the groceries, but the officers misunderstood. One of them thought she was resisting and raised his voice. "Step back now!" More people had their phones out now. The cashier didn't say anything else. Laverne looked around, hoping someone would explain, but everyone just watched. Her hands trembled as she tried to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. One officer took her by the arm and led her toward the front door. "You can explain yourself at the station," he said. "I don't understand," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. As she was led outside, the warm air suddenly felt cold. The sunshine she had enjoyed earlier now felt heavy. Her groceries were left behind on the counter. A woman near the door gasped and asked, "What's going on? She didn't do anything." The officers didn't respond. They placed Laverne in. The back of the police car. She sat quietly, holding back tears, trying to stay strong. Her wrists ached from the way she had been held, and her pride felt bruised more than anything else. At the station, Laverne was kept in a small room for a long time. She wasn't charged with anything. No one even asked her what had happened. They just left her sitting there. Eventually, an older officer came in and said, "You can make a phone call." Laverne nodded, slowly standing up. Her hands were shaking as she picked up the phone. She dialed a number she hadn't called in a long time, her son's special number. "Malik?" she said softly when he answered. "Mom?" His voice came through strong and clear. "Is everything all right?" There was a pause. Her voice broke slightly. I'm at the police station." That was all she said. There was another pause, longer this time. Then his voice lowered. "What happened?" "I went to the store," she said, trying to stay calm. "There was a mix-up, and the police took me. I don't understand why." Malik was quiet for a moment, but she could hear his breathing. It was slow and controlled. "I'm coming," he said firmly. Laverne closed her eyes and let out a deep breath. She knew her son would do whatever it took. He always had. Malik Jackson was not an ordinary man. He had served in the military for over 15 years, and now he was part of an elite unit called Delta Force. His job was secret. Most people didn't even know it existed. He traveled often, usually to places far from home, and he never spoke much about his work. But one thing was always clear: he loved his mother more than anything in the world. When Malik heard her voice on the phone that day, something inside him shifted. He had faced dangerous missions, been in many tough situations, but nothing had ever made him feel the way he did at that moment. His mother's voice was soft, almost trembling. She didn't cry, but he could hear the pain and confusion in every word. She hadn't explained much, but she didn't need to. Malik knew something was very wrong. His mother was a kind, gentle woman. She would never cause trouble. If she was at the police station, then something unfair had happened. He didn't ask for more details. He just said, "I'm coming." Malik was stationed at a secure military base several hours away, but that didn't matter. He immediately called his commanding officer and requested emergency leave. When they asked why, he simply replied, "Family emergency. My mother's in trouble." His tone was calm but serious. That was enough. The leave was approved without delay. He grabbed his bag and a jacket and left his quarters. As he walked across the base, he made a few quiet phone calls. These were not ordinary calls. He spoke to people who had power, who worked in law, media, and even government circles. Malik didn't raise his voice once. He just shared the facts. An elderly woman, a retired school teacher, had been taken by local police under suspicious circumstances. The people he called knew who Malik was. He had served his country with honor, completed missions no one could talk about, and had always stayed out of the spotlight. So when he called now, they listened carefully. Some of them had once owed him favors. Others respected him deeply. Either way, they promised to look into the situation right away. Meanwhile, back at the station, Laverne sat quietly in a chair. No one had spoken to her for a while. Her hands were still sore from being held too tightly earlier. A young officer walked by and gave her a quick glance, but he didn't say anything. She sat with her back straight, trying to stay calm. She knew Malik would come. He always did. Outside the police station, something unexpected was starting to happen. Someone had shared a short video clip on social media. It showed part of the incident at the grocery store, Miss Laverne standing quietly, being spoken to harshly, and then led away by officers. The person filming had also written, "Why? Is this elderly lady being treated like this?" She did nothing wrong. Within an hour, the video was being shared by hundreds of people. Some recognized her. "That's Miss Jackson, my old school teacher," one person wrote. "She taught my kids too," another added. People began commenting with love and concern. "She's the sweetest woman I know. This can't be right." Local reporters picked up the story. A few drove to the store and started asking questions. Others called the police station but got no answers. The story was growing quickly. Back on the road, Malik was driving. He had borrowed a government vehicle and was moving quickly but carefully. He kept his phone nearby, watching as updates rolled in. He saw the video. He saw the comments. His jaw tightened, but his hands remained steady on the wheel. His military training had taught him how to stay calm even when angry. Right now, that calm was all he needed. When he arrived in his hometown, the sun was starting to set. The sky was filled with orange and gold, but Malik didn't notice. He drove straight to the police station. Outside, a small group of people had gathered. Some held signs, others were just watching quietly. Word had gotten out. Something wasn't right. And the town wanted answers. Malik parked and stepped out of the car. He wasn't wearing a uniform. He looked like any other man, tall, strong, with a focused expression. But there was something different about him. The way he walked, the way he looked around, people could feel it. He moved with quiet purpose. Entered the station and walked straight to the front desk. A young officer looked up. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I'm here to see Laverne Jackson," Malik replied calmly. "And who are you?" "I'm her son." The officer hesitated, then looked at the computer. "She's still in the back. There's no charge filed." "Then I want her." "Released. Now." The officer didn't respond at first. Malik leaned in slightly. "Get your chief. I won't ask again." Something in his voice made the officer get up right away. A few minutes later, the police chief walked out. He was an older man, experienced, but he could see right away that Malik wasn't someone to dismiss. "You must be Malik," he said. "We were just about to let your mother go. There was a misunderstanding." Malik didn't blink. "Hey." Misunderstanding doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't leave an elderly woman sitting for hours without answers. The chief cleared his throat, trying to sound understanding. "We're looking into it. We've seen the video. We're talking to the officers involved." Malik stepped closer, his voice still calm but strong. "I'm not here for talk. I'm here for my mother. Bring her out." Within minutes, Laverne was brought into the front room. Her face lit up when she saw Malik. She stood slowly, and he moved forward to help her. He didn't say anything, just took her gently by the arm. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Now I am." He led her out of the station. People outside clapped quietly. Some were crying, others took photos. But Malik didn't stop to speak. He helped his mother into the car, shut the door gently, and got into the driver's seat. As they drove home, she looked at him. "You didn't have to come so fast." He smiled slightly. "I always will, Mama, always." Malik and his mother reached home just as the sky turned dark. The porch light came on as he helped her out of the car. She held his arm tightly, not because she couldn't walk, but because she needed the comfort. He guided her gently up the steps and opened the front door. The familiar smell of her lavender candles made the house feel warm again, but something had changed. Her safe little world had been shaken, and Malik knew it. He walked her to the couch and helped her sit down. Then he went into the kitchen to make her a cup of warm tea, just the way she liked it, with honey and no sugar. As the kettle boiled, he looked around. Everything in the house was neat, just like always. Pictures of old students, graduation, cards, and family photos covered the shelves. Her life had been full of love and care. She had given so much to her community. It was hard to believe she had been treated so unfairly. When he brought the tea to her, she smiled softly. "You still remember," she said. "Of course I do," he replied. They sat in silence for a few moments. Then she began telling him everything: how she had gone to the store, what the cashier had said, how the officers had arrived so quickly, and how no one really listened to her. She spoke slowly, stopping now and then to remember the details. Malik didn't interrupt. He just listened. When she finished, he nodded once. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "Do you think I overreacted?" She asked quietly. "No," he said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. You were polite. You were patient. You didn't deserve any of that." She looked down. "I've lived here my whole life. I know most of those people. I never thought something like this would happen to me." Malik took a deep breath. He didn't say much more that night. He just sat with her, making sure she felt safe, but deep inside, He had already made a decision. The next morning, Malik got up early. His mother was still asleep. He stepped outside and made a phone call. The person on the other end was someone from his old training team. He trusted her. He asked her to help collect information legally, quietly, and quickly. He wanted to know the names of the officers involved, the details of their service records, and if there had been other complaints against them. Then he called a friend who worked as a civil rights lawyer in the city. Malik didn't want revenge. He wanted justice. He explained the whole story, and his friend promised to help. "I'll come down today," the lawyer said. "We'll get started right away." Malik knew the town was already talking. People had seen the video. Some were angry. Others were confused. Many had loved and respected Miss Laverne for years. It didn't make sense to them how she had been treated like that. Later that afternoon, Malik and his mother sat in the living room watching the local news. The story was now on TV. Reporters were outside the store asking questions. One of the officers had already been identified by name. The police department had released a short statement calling it a routine check that may have been misunderstood. Laverne shook her head. "Routine?" she whispered. "It didn't feel routine," Malik nodded. "Don't worry. People are seeing the truth now." The doorbell rang. Malik opened it to find two women standing there. One of them was a reporter from the local newspaper. The other was a community leader from a nearby church. "We just wanted to say we're sorry for what happened." The church leader said, "We're planning a peaceful gathering in the park tomorrow to show support for Miss Jackson." Malik thanked them and said his mother would appreciate it. He told them she was still resting, but that their visit meant a lot. After they left, Malik sat down with a notebook and began writing. He wasn't writing a letter or a complaint. He was writing a timeline, every detail, every phone call, every event. He wanted a full, clear picture. Not for drama, but for facts. He believed in handling things the right way. That evening, his lawyer friend arrived. She sat with Malik and Laverne, asked gentle questions, and took notes. She promised to file an official complaint with the police department and the town's legal board. She also suggested reaching out to larger news organizations. If more people hear this story, she said, the system will have to respond. Malik agreed, but he also warned her. "We're not here to make a scene. We just want truth and respect." "I understand," the lawyer said. "But sometimes the truth needs to be loud." The next day, the park was filled with people. Families, students, teachers, and even store workers came to show support. Some carried signs that said, "Justice for Miss Laverne" or "Respect our elders." Others brought flowers or food to share. It was peaceful, loving, and full of warmth. Laverne didn't want to speak, but she came to watch. Malik helped her to a chair under a tree. People came up to her, one by one, offering hugs, kind words, and memories from their school days. "You taught me to read," one man said. "You told me I was smart when no one else did." Laverne smiled, tears in her eyes. "You all turned out just fine," she said. At the edge of the park, a few police officers stood watching. They didn't approach. Malik saw them, but didn't say anything. He wasn't there for them. He was there for his mother, that night. Laverne sat by her window and looked out at the quiet street. She felt tired, but she also felt stronger. She knew things would not be the same after this. But she also knew she wasn't alone. Malik sat across from her with a small folder in his lap. "What's that?" she asked. "It's everything," he said. "Names, reports, timelines. We're going to take this all the way." She looked at him with love. "I don't want trouble." "I know," he said gently, "and we won't make trouble. But we won't let this go either." She nodded slowly. "I trust you." And with that, Malik knew he had what he needed, not just information or support, but her blessing. He would do everything quietly, with strength and honor. Just like he was trained to do. Just like his mother had taught him from the very beginning. A few days had passed since the peaceful gathering in the park, but the story was still growing. More news stations picked it up. Larger websites began to share what had happened to Miss Laverne Jackson. The small town that was usually quiet had suddenly become a focus of national attention. Reporters were now calling it the case that touched hearts across America. People from different cities started writing letters and messages to Laverne. Some shared their own experiences. Others simply wrote to say thank you or to express their support. Children sent hand-drawn cards with kind words like, "You're strong and you are loved." Malik collected them all and kept them in a box labeled Hope. One morning, Malik was in the kitchen making breakfast while his mother rested. On the couch, he heard a soft knock on the door. When he opened it, he saw a woman in a business suit holding a small folder and a warm smile. "Good morning," she said kindly. "I'm from the mayor's office. May I come in for a moment?" Malik nodded slowly and invited her inside. She sat on the armchair and opened her folder. "We've been watching everything closely," she began. "And the mayor would like to offer a public apology. He would also like to meet Miss Jackson personally and express his regrets." Malik listened carefully. "I'll ask my mother," he said. "But this is not just about apologies. She deserves real change." The woman nodded. "I agree. That's why the city council is planning a meeting to review the police department's behavior. They've also received dozens of letters from the community." That was a step in the right direction, but Malik was careful not to trust words too quickly. After the visitor left, he sat down with his mother and explained everything. Laverne thought for a while before speaking. "I'm not angry at the mayor," she said, "but I do think people in power should listen more carefully." "Not just when something bad happens," Malik nodded. "That's why we'll be there. Not just to be heard, but to help others who don't have someone to speak for them." Later that week, the city council held a special meeting. The hall was packed with people, neighbors, teachers, students, and even store employees. Malik stood beside his mother as she was welcomed to the front row. Everyone clapped when she entered. Some even stood. She smiled humbly and waved. Still, surprised by how much love the community had shown her, the mayor walked up to the microphone. He looked serious and respectful. "I want to begin by saying something simple. I'm sorry," he said. "Miss Jackson has given years of service to our town. What happened to her should never have happened. We are now looking into every part of this case, and we promise change." The room was quiet. Some people nodded. Others waited to see what actions would follow those words. The chief of police was also present. He spoke carefully, saying the officers involved had been placed on temporary leave while a full investigation was underway. "We are not rushing to judgment," he said, "but we are taking this seriously." When it was Malik's turn to speak, he walked slowly to the microphone. The room went silent. "My name is Malik Jackson," he began. "I serve in the United States military. I've spent years protecting this country, but I never imagined I'd have to come home and protect my own mother from the people who are supposed to protect her." His voice was steady, but full of emotion. "My mother didn't raise her voice. She didn't break any laws. She was scared, but she stayed calm, and yet she was treated like she didn't matter. That's not just about one mistake. That's a message, and it's the wrong one." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. "But this isn't just about my mother. It's about every quiet person, every elder, every kind soul who gets ignored or mistreated. If we don't stand up now, we're saying it's okay, and it's not." People clapped, some quietly, some with full hearts. A few wiped away tears. After the meeting, reporters tried to ask Malik questions, but he politely declined. He helped his mother back into the car and drove her home. That evening they sat outside on the porch. The wind was gentle, and the trees rustled softly. The stars were beginning to appear. "I'm proud of you," Laverne said, her hand resting on her son's. Malik smiled. "I'm proud of you too, Mama. You've been strong through all of this." She looked up at the sky. "Do you think it'll really change anything?" He thought for a moment. "Maybe not right away, but it's a start, and sometimes that's all we need." In the days that followed, several things happened. The officers involved in the incident were officially suspended. The police department announced a new training program for how to better interact with elderly citizens and people in sensitive situations. A hotline was created for people to report unfair treatment without fear. More importantly, a group of local volunteers led by teachers, pastors, and community workers formed a council to watch over public services, including the police. They invited Malik and Laverne to be part of it. Malik accepted, and even though Laverne didn't want a public role, she agreed to attend some meetings and give quiet advice. Slowly, the town began to feel different. The grocery store where the incident happened put up a new poster at the entrance. It said, "Respect, kindness, community, always." Underneath, it featured a picture of Miss Laverne smiling, along with the words, "Thank you for reminding us what truly matters." Strangers still came up to her at the market, at church, or during walks, just to say hello or to thank her. She always smiled, even though her heart still carried some sadness. What had happened to her had left a mark, but she had turned it into something powerful, a reason to bring people together, and through it all, Malik remained by her side. He still had his military duties, and soon he would return to his post. But now, he had created something lasting for his mother, and for others too. On the night before he was set to leave again, Malik packed his things quietly in his old room. His mother walked in and sat on the edge of the bed. "I still wish you didn't have to go," she said. "I know," he replied. "But I'll be back, and you'll be okay," she nodded. "I've got the whole town now. I've got friends calling every day, and I've got your voice in my heart." He hugged her tightly, just like he used to when he was little. "Don't ever forget, Mama," he whispered. "No matter where I go, you'll never be alone." The morning Malik was leaving, the sun rose gently, casting soft light through the kitchen window. Laverne stood quietly at the stove, making her son's favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs. Turkey bacon and toast with strawberry jam? She didn't say much. Her heart was heavy, but her hands stayed steady. Cooking gave her comfort, especially when she was worried. Malik came down the stairs dressed in his uniform, ready to return to duty. He gave his mother a gentle smile as he walked into the kitchen. She handed him a plate without saying a word, but he saw the emotion in her eyes. "Looks amazing, Mama," he said. Sitting down, they ate together in silence for a few minutes. The soft clinking of forks and spoons was the only sound in the room. Then Laverne spoke softly. "Promise me you'll stay safe." Malik nodded. "I always do, I know," she said, her voice calm. "But I still worry. You've always been strong, even as a little boy. But this world, it's not always kind." He reached across the table and held her hand. "I know, but because of you, I've learned how to handle it. With strength and with heart." After breakfast, Malik walked out to the front yard to place his bags in the car. The street was quiet, but as he turned around, he saw something unexpected. One by one, neighbors began stepping out of their homes. Some held signs. Others just stood silently with smiles and waves. One little girl held a small flag with the words, "Thank you, Malik." Another man, a retired firefighter, saluted him with deep respect. Laverne stepped out onto the porch and gasped. Malik looked around. Touched by the simple but powerful moment, he gave a short wave to everyone, feeling proud and grateful. "Thank you all," he said. A neighbor called out, "We're proud of you, son, and of your mama, too." After that, Malik gave his mother one last hug. "Call me any time," he whispered. "I will," she said. "You take care of yourself." Then he drove off slowly, the town behind him waving goodbye like family. As the weeks passed, Laverne settled into a new rhythm. She returned to her peaceful daily habits, watering her garden in the morning, reading books in the afternoon, and enjoying tea at sunset. But now there was a new lightness in her step. People came by more often. The local school invited her to speak about kindness and dignity. The library put up a small display about her story titled, "One Voice, One Town." The community council that Malik helped form continued to meet every 2 weeks. Laverne attended the meetings, always sitting quietly, but her presence alone made people feel hopeful. Her gentle advice often helped guide decisions. One evening, a young mother said, "Miss Jackson, you speak so softly, but your words always carry weight." Laverne smiled. "Sometimes we don't need to speak loudly to be heard." In the background, quiet changes were happening. The police department began inviting community members to training sessions, teaching them how to interact with officers. while officers learned how to better understand their neighbors. Trust didn't return overnight, but step by step it grew. One evening, the officer who had first approached Laverne at the store requested to meet with her. At first, Laverne wasn't sure. She didn't want drama, and she didn't seek punishment. But after some thought, she agreed on one condition: it would be a private conversation. No cameras, no reporters. The meeting took place at the local community center. The officer walked in looking nervous but sincere. He sat across from Laverne, eyes low, voice soft. "I want to say I'm sorry," he began. "That day I didn't stop to think. I followed a report too quickly. I didn't listen. And I should have." Laverne looked at him quietly, then said, "I appreciate you saying that." They spoke for over 20 minutes. Not about what had happened, but about how to move forward. Laverne didn't blame him. She simply wanted to help him understand. When the meeting ended, she stood and said, "I hope you grow from this. We all can." The officer nodded. "I already have." Later that week, a group of young girls from the local school knocked on her door. They had put together a scrapbook filled with messages, drawings, and photos. The cover said, "For our hero." Laverne smiled warmly and invited them in. They sat around her living room as she flipped through the pages, touched by the kind words. One little girl said, "When I grow up, I want to be like you." Laverne gently placed her hand on the girl's shoulder. "Just be kind, dear. That's all it takes." Malik kept in touch regularly. He called every Sunday, asking about the town, the garden, and her new meetings. He didn't talk much about his work, but he always made sure to say how proud he was of her. One day, he surprised her with a video message. It was played during a community appreciation night organized by the town. In the video, Malik stood tall in his uniform. "To my mother," he said, "you've taught me that strength doesn't come from force, it comes from love, dignity, and standing up for what's right, even when your voice shakes." The room clapped. Laverne covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes full of tears. She had never asked for attention, but she received it with grace. Months later, things in the town were calmer, but better. The grocery store manager who had stood silently during the original incident came to visit her. He brought flowers and a note. It said, "Thank you for opening my eyes." She accepted the flowers with a smile and said gently, "It's never too late to do better." Laverne spent her days planting new flowers in her garden. Children sometimes stopped by to help her water them. People passed her house and waved. A once quiet woman had now become a symbol not just of courage, but of kindness, wisdom, and quiet strength. One spring afternoon, a reporter visited her again for a follow-up story. When asked what she wanted people to remember, Laverne said, "I want people to remember that small voices matter, that no one is too old or too quiet to stand for what's right." I didn't plan to change anything. I just stood my ground and the rest followed. The story ended up being shared once again across the country. But for Laverne, that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was that her town had grown. What mattered was that young people now had someone to look up to when they felt small. And most of all, what mattered was that love, not anger, had led the way. In the heart of the town, under a tall oak tree in the park where the peaceful gathering had once taken place, a small bench was placed with a metal plaque that read, "In honor of Laverne Jackson, teacher, neighbor, and quiet light." She reminded us who we are. Every evening, people came to sit on that bench. Some came to think, some came to pray. Others came just to remember. And sometimes Laverne herself came too. With her straw hat, a walking cane, and a small smile on her face. She didn't need to say anything. She had already said enough.